It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
We now have the great Bill O'Reilly. Bill, we were just talking about the fact that DOJ is suing Virginia, over this issue of kicking off non-citizens. You probably saw this, a number of these governors have removed these non-citizens who you shouldn't have on the voter rolls, and Department of Justice is suing them. You can't make it up, Bill.
Yeah, I know they'll lose the Department of Justice, and hopefully the suit won't even be filed. So Kamala will lose in 3 weeks from today, and it'll all be put down. But all of these things are just signal after signal after signal. And, it's interesting because I have a lot of liberal friends. I mentioned this before on the Katz and Cosby show. And when I ask them, I don't use emotion. I mean, I'm not in it to scorn anybody. We're all Americans. We all have a right to vote who we want to vote. But when you ask the essential questions of, okay, what good does that do? All right, what good does the Department of Justice using its resources, which of course it should be using to chase Puff Daddy all over the place? What good does it do to sue a state that's trying to clean up its voting rolls? And then you get a look, you get a stare. And these are educated people. They can't answer the questions. And so you go on and on and on and on and on with that kind of a situation.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, speaking of which, Bill, too, speaking of on and on, Kamala Harris is starting to do a bit of a media blitz this week. What do you make of the fact she's doing a Charlemagne the God because she's trying to woo African-American male voters? Her campaign's pretty much said that out there. And then also tomorrow, Bret Baier on Fox News. That's interesting.
Well, Bret Baier's not going to help her with African Americans. The God guy might. There is African American media. The blacks consume the media, and he's a pretty big name in it. So that makes sense to me that she would go in there and say, "Look, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z for blacks," and okay. Now with the Baier thing. This is fascinating to me because tonight at 9 on Common Sense, right before Rita Cosby, everyone, the exact same thing happened to me in 2008. Exactly the same. So then Senator Barack Obama is slipping in the polls, September, running against John McCain. I get a call out of nowhere, and I was on Fox News Time, and I was saying, hey, Senator, come on. He told me you were going to come on my show, which he did in New Hampshire in the primary. And this is the time to do it. I get a call. Be in York, Pennsylvania tomorrow at 10 a.m. and you can interview Obama. And it came out of nowhere. And he had not done any interviews on Fox. So I did, of course, right? And I'm going to play 2 minutes of that interview tonight. On WABC. And the reason I'm doing it is to show you the difference between what an aggressive interviewer does. And we weren't, it wasn't nasty. It wasn't confrontational. Weren't bad feelings. And I forced him to answer the question. And it's a question that's still relevant today about Iran nukes. When I say I'm forced him, you'll see. I saw he had to answer it. And that's what Baier's got to do tomorrow. So when I say got to, this interview is harder for Baier than it is for Harris.
Is she desperate to go to Baier?
I don't know. I don't know if it's desperate or not. I don't know if that word. I was at Yankee Stadium last night for the opener. And John McLaughlin, the pollster, was there along with very powerful New York City people, all of whom wanted to know, is Mayor Adams going to survive? And I told them no, he will not. Just that's an aside. But desperate, I don't know if it's the right word. They know that they are sinking, not dramatically, but it's worrisome. And they feel that they might be able to get through a 20-minute, and that's all it is. They put a cap on it. I interviewed Obama for 45. They might get through it with Bear, because Bear is not an opinion host and he's not confrontational. But Bear himself, if he doesn't come across as really holding her accountable if she dodges, is going to put his career at great risk. So there's a little high drama tomorrow.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, because people will be watching him.
Can I ask you, Bill, if you were doing that interview, because Brett actually sent out a tweet today saying, what question should I ask Kamala Harris? What do you think, what question do you think would be the most important thing to ask? If you're doing the interview, what do you ask her?
Well, number one, it's not a good sign if Bear's sending out tweets wanting to know what question. Right. Now, to be fair, he did that to gin up interest in the interview. That's a marketing tool.
Right.
Okay. So if I'm interviewing, you got to understand what this is. It's a prize fight. All heavyweight interviews are prize fights. You got to know who your opponent is, and you have to have a strategy.
Right.
Because nobody's going to do anybody any favors in that. Now, the first thing I open up with is something that she has said, that she can't deny saying. And that, of course, would be, you said on The View there isn't one thing you could think of that you would change under President Biden. Now, that immediately puts you in charge of the fight. You just by asking the question, she's backpedaling now. And then I would say, did you really mean that? Okay. Then it's over to you, Madam Vice President, which is how I would address her. What is she going to say? I assume she'll say, well, there are, of course, things, blah, blah, blah. And then I would pounce, the O'Reilly pounce that I'm famous for. I would say, and you have to have a stat ready. It has to be ready to go. It is estimated that the open door policy that you and Joe Biden had has cost the United States $3 trillion, or whatever the stat is. And you got to cite who gave it to you. How do you justify that? I would lead with that. And then I would go into...
I wish you were doing the interview.
Of course, everyone does. Everyone does. And then you get into, you spend the first 10 minutes on immigration. First 10 minutes. Because inflation is a little trickier.
Oh, you're going to let the criminals and murderers in.
Right. And then you get into, the specifics of the horror of, okay, not only are we spending money we don't have because we have a $35 trillion debt, $9 trillion of which came in the last 3 years under you guys, okay, but what do you say to Lake and Riley's family? Right. There she's going to pivot into it's Trump's fault. And that's where the interview starts to get dicey because she's looking for again, prize fight analogy, an opening to drag Trump in that he's the problem because they didn't pass this Chuck Schumer bill. So you don't want to get bogged down in that until the end. And then I would pivot immediately. Essentials of life were up 20%. Under Trump, when he walked out the door, it was 1.4% inflation. Can you explain that? Again, stat.
Question.
Yeah, you know what? By the way, Bill, did you see this? And I'm curious, Steve, more on this. It's interesting. The other day, Obama actually came out and said, "Yeah, Trump had a great inflation. I gave it to him." Right. I know.
That's fine. That's great. Yeah. He gave it to him. I'm sure Trump is very grateful and gave him a nice Christmas gift. Yeah. All right. So
and Trump gave Biden a low inflation rate, and Biden blew it up.
You have to be laser locked in on your opponent. You can't let it deviate out. Now, Kamala Harris has never, in all of this time that she's been running, or the 3 years she's a vice president, and you would feel that you can't be a vice president, and I'm the expert on this after writing Confronting the Presidents, You can't be a vice president and undermine the main guy because they've all been 45 guys. It's impossible. So when J.D. Vance was going, Harris did this, Harris did Paul, Harris didn't do anything. Harris did what she was told. Go to this funeral, go down the border and wave at people in El Paso. That's what she did. She didn't make policy. But it shows because she doesn't have solutions to the problems. And then after you get by immigration and you get into inflation, then the next thing Bear should do, and I hope he's listening, is go into problem solving. How specifically, Madam Vice President, would you solve the Ukraine thing? Or is it every 6 months we have to go and give them $10 billion or whatever it may be? How would you do it specifically? You think she can stand up and answer those questions? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, Bill, you hit it on the head with specifics because that's the one thing she hasn't really been. She's come up with this circular answer. The other day she did one with Roland Martin. You probably saw it. She was asked about crime, and she gave this thing about the constellation in the skies, and it's
ran it tonight.
Right.
I wrote it on Common Sense.
Yeah, isn't that it's an astounding, and it does have to be laser-like, and also her track record, reading back the quotes of what she has said. I mean, she has said some very, highly,
She wanted to abolish ICE.
Well, abolish ICE, also open up and make anybody who crosses illegally legal.
Legalize
right, right. What did you mean? Here's exactly what you said. Here's what you said on this date, on this time. What do you know? I mean, a lot of that. And you're right. She hasn't been held her feet to the fire at all.
Now, FNC can have tape loaded and ready to go. But I don't know if they've agreed to that or not. Look, you can get her on almost every issue because she's on the wrong side of almost every issue. You can get her on now. You want to legalize pot federally? What good does that do? Have you walked down the street of Manhattan lately? Have you seen the little kids getting stoned before they go to school lately? Have you seen any of that? Now you want it nationwide? Only 3 non-communist countries have abortion on demand for any reason at any time. Why do you think there's only 3 countries in the world that allow that? How about that for an abortion question?
Yep. No, that's great. That's great. Bill, so anyway, I wish you were.
Everybody wishes I were doing the interview, but she would never in a million years go up against me, ever.
Well, we will definitely be watching tomorrow to see what happens with Brett, too, for sure, for sure. What do you make of also, Bill, just real quick, with some of the polls, too, because it does seem like the polls are absolutely tightening for her and doing better for Trump.
According to McLaughlin, Trump's up by 2. And at this time in 2020, he was down by 10. Trump was. So that's a pretty big swing. And Trump, of course, lost by 4.5 points in 20. So the polls were up by 6. Now, if the same system is in place, which I believe it is, as far as polling is concerned, that's what the Democrats are worried about. That all the polls had Hillary in 16 and Biden in 20, much further ahead of Trump than what it turned out to be. If that's the case, and I think it might be the case, because I have said this isn't a prediction, it's an opinion. I'll make a prediction on Halloween. I have said I think Trump is going to win.
Well, we pray for that.
Yeah, America prays for that.
The free world prays for that.
John, I'm telling you, nobody in Hollywood or in the Manhattan City Council is praying for that.
That's true.
We, there's an asterisk on the we.
Bill, thank you very much. We'll be tuning in tonight. We love having you on, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.